This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 529 for the week of September 7th, 2025. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Kanzenshuu, the podcast, an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site, Kanzenshuu. We cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. Hello, indeed. It is great to be back with you. My name is Mike. You may see me around the internets as VegettoEX. Fresh off Otakon about a month ago. So the con was like a month ago. God, was it really a month ago at this point? Yeah, it was about a month ago. I've basically been sick the entire month. So I am pushing through on a podcast now in a variety of ways and for a variety of reasons. I've actually rescheduled a whole bunch of episodes I've been wanting to work on here. And this is a rare, doesn't make it any less good, solo episode, which is me, Mike, VegettoEX, this episode. I've got a two-parter for you this episode. I'm going to take you through a research journey, and I'm going to do a mini review with you. The only reason I mentioned, hey, I've been sick and I'm rearranging things, this actually works out really well, except for the sick part. My voice has been completely shot for the last month, which makes it really difficult to do a podcast. So I was kind of thankful that I had the editing on the Otakon episode in the meantime. I was able to do the surrounding stuff for that. This one I've been putting off doing some other episodes. I'm like, those are not going to happen. I'm going to have to find the perfect time where I feel like, all right, I can push through on this. I've got the biggest tea in the world next to me right here. So I'm just going to take my time recording in bits and pieces. I'll stitch it all together in the end. You'll be none the wiser, except for the fact that I just told you that. And that's what's on tap for this here episode. My split part topic for you this episode, I'm going to take you through an audio journey, I suppose, of looking for the title page popularity poll. I believe I've talked a little bit about this on the podcast before, but I'm going to share kind of my side of the story with you before I get it all formatted for text and individual pages and citations on the website. And then I've got a mini review after that, because that's not a full episode by itself. I wanted to do something else. And I have something I wanted to review, but it's not Dragon Ball. But it's very linked to Dragon Ball. So it doesn't make sense to do as its own thing. I'm like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity for me to talk about this. I'm going to do a little review of Bonds. This is a one-shot manga release. It's actually, I believe it's the first, at least of the first of a batch of things the Manga Mavericks Books has put out. So shout out to them for getting into the realm of actual distribution of manga. It's a Journey to the West story. So you can certainly see the connection there. I just thought it was a neat little story, and I've got some thoughts and input and reflections on it myself. Maybe I can teach you a thing or two about Journey to the West along the way. That's what this episode is going to be. No idea how it's going to go, how it's going to sound, but thank you for joining me for the journey. I'm going to take a sip of tea. Let's get on into it. Let's talk about the search for the title page popularity poll in early Dragon Ball. So this journey starts, as a few things had recently, with a kind of like an innocent and innocuous question, ask, and thoughts from our buddy Senpai, who we had on the show recently, is doing an all-new translation of the Dragon Ball manga over there in Portugal. So thank you for that. I don't know what I'm thanking you for other than just doing a good job and get the new version out there. Oh, I'm thanking you for thinking about this and questioning it and putting it out there. And then I'm also thanking myself for kind of like doubling down on it and be like, no, wait a minute. We have to go back. So this all stems from chapter 12 of the Dragon Ball manga. The interesting thing is if you put the original 1985 number 12 issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, which is where chapter 12 of Dragon Ball was originally serialized, alongside, say, like the Tankobon or the Kanzenban, the title pages are entirely different. Before we get into the actual chapter 12 title page, what they did here is they got rid of chapter 12's original title page. And then what they did is they used what was the original title page for chapter 13, moved up to 12, which then leaves 13 without a title page. So some things get shifted around. All right. So then why did they get rid of the chapter 12 title page in the first place? All right, we go back and look at the original chapter 12 title page. cool piece of art, it's Goku flying off in Kintone. Oh, there's a whole bunch of text and like there's a chart down there with numbers and votes and things. This is actually the end result of the title page popularity poll. So we're starting here at the end. As translated by Zenpai at the bottom here, thank you all so much for having voted in such great numbers. The winner of the title page popularity poll was the one from chapter 3, which you can see on your left. We will draw lots among everyone that voted for this cover and send a gorgeous color illustration to 100 lucky people, such as Takashi Higashida-kun from Miyazaki Prefecture. It should arrive to your house in about a month from now, so please await it with bated breath. So there's a couple reasons why they could have removed the chapter 12 original title page as is, complete with all this text. Notable one there is it's someone's full name. They say exactly what this person's name is and where they live, what prefecture they're from. This is fairly common of the era. I mean, if you look back at magazines, it wasn't easy to say, for example, go digitally stalk someone. So if you were going to track someone down and, I don't know, go steal their prize, it was a little more difficult back then than it would be today. But, you know, thinking about, oh, this could be printed in perpetuity. And sure enough, tankobon has basically been in print since then for decades. This person's name would remain in there the entire time. So that makes sense. They might want to take it out for that. But also, if you think about the tankobon, you know, you lose all this splash text from the actual chapter content pages. So you're not going to get any of that information anymore. This would just feel out of place. It would have no context for someone reading a collected edition of the manga. So twofold reason there. Probably got someone's name and doesn't make sense anymore to include. So they got rid of it. And they had to do some shenanigans there. So they swapped 13 for 12, then 13 loses it. That's it. All right. This is where my brain starts kicking in. Okay, cool. We got the results of it. Hey, where did they announce this poll, this contest? And that led me, oh boy, down a journey. That's not a phrase. It led me on a journey. First thing you want to do, all right, I'm just going to Google this phrase. We have the exact phrase for what this title page popularity poll is. So, you know, throw that into Google in quotes in Japanese, even throw it into Twitter in a Twitter search. At the time when I was originally doing this, there was one Google result for that complete phrase. And at that point, it only referenced the digest edition version of the chapter 12 title page, which was just someone's blog in Japanese mentioning the fact that this page had this poll on it. So no information about it itself, just a note that it had it. And there's one tweet for the same phrase, which only references the title pages being moved around. So basically, two people noted this thing was here, but didn't say anything else about it. Because like me, they probably had no idea what it was or why it was. But, oh, yep, there's this thing. They had this poll and here are the results. All right, this is the kind of obligatory Thanos, I'll do it myself.gif. So away I went. I have some early Dragon Ball. Well, actually I have a lot now, but at the time I didn't have a ton. At the time I started this journey, I'm pretty sure the only one I owned was the 1985 number 10 issue. And the reason I bought that one is actually because it's got a drawing and a comment from Akira Toriyama about the movie Neverending Story. We actually posted this on the website back in 2023, it looks like. So I had that issue already. I'm thinking, okay, by the time issue 12 comes out that year, they would need to have baked in some time for contest submissions to arrive and be counted. And they're already working on what, like the next issue by that point. So if the results appear in the number 12 issue, like the 10 issue is kind of like the latest possible time that they could announce this contest. Because by the time the 12 issue is already like put together and ready to go to print, 11's already been out there. Like the timing just doesn't work. So 10 has got to be the latest it could be out there. So flip through all the pages in 10. Didn't see anything about a title page popularity poll. All right, I got to go back. So I started building a box on Bai before all the tariff bullshit. This was a couple months ago. And there were a few things going on here. So I couldn't necessarily get every issue. Probably goes without saying that the 1984 number 51 issue of Weekly Shonen Jump is a little expensive with the debut chapter of Dragon Ball. So I didn't get that one. But I got a bunch of other stuff. I figured, okay, if they're going to announce this poll, all right, I've already figured 10's got to be the latest. Well, the way that the poll works is you chose from the first 5 chapters of Dragon Ball, because those were the color chapters that Toriyama originally did at the very beginning of the series. Big full page color chapter title pages. Great stuff. Those are the ones you were voting on. Okay. I was kind of figuring 5 was like a linchpin of this, because if 5 was the last choice, well, maybe they repeated it or announced it alongside chapter 5, or maybe also chapter 6, because if 6 was the one after that, maybe they could do like a full page showcase of here were the previous 5 chapters. Here are the ones you want to vote from. Figure, okay, those are good choices for me to throw into a box. I ended up getting chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 11, and 12. So that almost fleshed out like a huge portion of that early series. That would effectively take me from 3 to 12. That, however, left number 7 that I wouldn't have coming in this box. Now, 85 number 7, which has chapter 7 in it, that was the second cover of Dragon Ball by Toriyama in Weekly Shonen Jump, following after the debut chapter. So that one actually goes for a lot more money than the other ones did. At the time that I was putting this box together, that one was going for about $150. The other one you didn't hear in there was actually the number 8 issue. At the time I was building the box, I actually couldn't find one on Mercari or Yahoo Japan auctions, but I did find one, a real shit quality one, on eBay. So I ended up buying that from an American seller on eBay. So I got all those in. Perfect. It's come on. Running the numbers here, like, oh, it might be in the number 7 issue, but probably not. Like, come on. If I'm going to get basically 3 through 12, I got this huge span here. What are the odds that it's going to be in 7? All right. So I flipped through all the issues. I'm looking. It's like, okay, I don't see any spreads of anything. No one's talking about chapter title pages. I don't see any repeats, like galleries of the title pages. There's no special pages surrounding the Dragon Ball chapters that maybe mention a poll. Nothing out of place. Nothing in the back of the magazine. Nothing there. All right. Well, I'm going to look at, what about the survey cards? Maybe it's on those. By some luck of the draw, just the magic of Shenlong here, every issue I got still had its feedback postcards in there. So I looked at all of those, and there's some funny stuff in there. Some of them were like, how many hours do you spend doing homework a night, alongside like what were your favorite chapters on the issue? They're really funny to go back and look at those. Occasionally there are like other random postcards in there. I'm like, okay, is it going to be on one of these? Folks, I am telling you, I could not find anything about this stupid title page popularity poll in all these issues. I'm like, son of a bitch. It's going to be in that 85 number 7 issue, isn't it? All right. I got to buy that issue, don't I? So I resigned myself to another box, and I ended up getting the number 7 issue. Thankfully, by the time I was buying these, one seller had a 4% discount of their own, and then Bai sent me a 10% Mercari coupon. So I saved a good amount of cash on getting this issue. So alongside the 85 number 7 issue, I'm like, all right, I'm already working my way back here. Why don't I get the 84 number 52 issue? So now I'm going to have chapters 2 through 12. Maybe it would only be in the number 1 issue, and I'll like, okay, well, that's it. I'll just have to ask someone else rather than do it myself. So I get these in. I'm looking. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Really felt like I was going crazy. There's all these cool spreads at the beginning of some of these issues, like Fish on the North Star calendar in here. I'm like, all right, that's cool. I'm glad I have that now. Ads for so many things, all these color pages and splashes. Nothing about this title page popularity poll. So at this point, I'm thinking, all right, I've missed something. This is impossible. There's no way that it's only in the number 1 issue, and then they don't mention it again. And then it's like, what, months later that somehow this popularity poll is going to be in there without them ever mentioning it again in the magazine. That seems impossible. So now I go, all right, I'm going to look real closely. I'm going to flip through every single page of every single issue here and absolutely scour the text looking for something. So I started with chapter 5, and then like, Mike, you idiot, you never looked at like the actual content of the chapters. You're looking around the chapters. Did you look in the chapters? No, I did not look in the chapters. Should I have looked in the chapters? Yes, I should have looked in the chapters. One page, you get the usual blurb. This is a work of fiction, not based on anything. Other page, tiny text, bottom of the page, big block of text, big block of text. Hard to miss. On a postcard, write your address, name, and attach the ticket from the issue that has a title page that you like between chapters 1 and 5 and send in your vote. Among those who voted for the title page with the most entries, 10 people will be chosen by lottery to receive a color panel of the original artwork for that page. Here's the address. The deadline is January 7th of next year, Monday. Winners will be announced by the shipping of the prizes. Entries without the application ticket will be invalid. Please be careful. There it is. Just plain text at the bottom of the page in chapter 5. God damn it, Mike. Was this in every chapter? Pick up chapter 4. Flip the pages. Same text at the bottom of the page. Look at chapter 3. Same text at the bottom of the page. Just a wonderful example of you think you're being thorough, but you were not being thorough. You didn't look at, you looked around. So what it actually is the very bottom of the page for these, alongside this text, and then in the corner of the page, there's this little square icon. It's a picture of Shenlong, and then it's got the number of the chapter that it is. So what you're supposed to do is cut out that little square and then send that, I guess, taped or on or with a postcard to the address here by that deadline of January 7th. And what's really funny is my chapters 2 through 5 here, all of them have the little square there. No one cut them out of any of these issues. So it's kind of funny that chapter 3 won with, I'm going to say, only 4,290 votes. And they got just under 15,000 votes total. You just think about the serialization back then, the distribution of this magazine, how much was out there in circulation. Like only 15,000, I guess. People didn't want to cut up a little square in their magazine. So that was that. It is actually there at the bottom of all 5 of those first chapters. It was there the whole time. So now I've been joking, and it's not so much of a joke. I've backed my way into owning chapters 2 through 12 at the beginning of the series. There's only one way to go from there, and that's to get chapter 1 at some point. So that is my journey, looking for the title page popularity poll. As shown on the original serialization title page for chapter 12 of Dragon Ball, this title page was removed from all subsequent collected editions, although it is there in the digest edition. If you don't remember, that's the bigger edition of the manga that came out in 2016. It was I guess you want to call it a limited edition release, a MOOC style release. They were the same size as the original Weekly Shonen Jump, and they did all chapters of the original Dragon Ball at that size, in that format, with a lot of the original splash text there. Although, so in the digest edition, it does have the original chapter 12 title page, but it does not have at the very bottom of the page where that text was that told you about entering the contest. So this is one of those examples where, yeah, the digest edition has a lot of stuff you're looking for. We've talked about things like the chapter before Vegito names himself. It says, Gogeta will be born or come about next chapter, things like that. But it doesn't have all the splash and incidental text. It does not have how to enter the title page popularity poll. That's that. I hope you enjoyed that journey. It sure was a journey. So I've been documenting all that. I've told a couple bits of this story in Patreon posts over there on patreon.com/Kanzenshuu. Be adding these tidbits and translations of this text to the respective chapter pages over in the manga guide on Kanzenshuu. That's that. I'm going to take a little break. Hope you enjoyed the title page popularity poll journey. I will see you on the flip side of this break after a little bit of tea here to talk about Bonds, the one-shot manga release by Zenzo, released by Manga Mavericks Books. Be with you in a minute. If Manga Mavericks sounds familiar, you might remember back in 2022, the kind folks there at the Manga Mavericks podcast had me on their show to help review Akira Toriyama's Manga Theater as released by Viz in English. Manga Mavericks has expanded. They are now a legitimate manga distributor, English language releases. Super, super cool. Congrats to them on that heck of an initiative to take on. I just think that background is worth knowing as I turn here to review something that they just put out. As I mentioned, this is a one-shot by Zenzo. It is called Bonds, Bonds. This is a Journey to the West one-shot. So I knew, and for the most part still know, almost nothing about Zenzo. Zenzo is a manga artist. Sounds like he studied under Takafumi Adachi. Won some stuff in the past. Bonds first came out in 2019, and Manga Mavericks Books is releasing it just back in July of this year in 2025. This is a one-shot, so this is really interesting. It is only 36 pages total. So for context, a Dragon Ball Super manga chapter was at its regular peak over there in V-Jump was 45 pages. So this is shorter than a Dragon Ball Super manga chapter, but longer than kind of like the traditional, 12, 14 page manga chapter. I knew nothing about this other than seeing it promoted and seeing it was about Journey to the West. I was actually a little hesitant to buy it because this is a 36 page one shot that is $12 in print. So, I mean, that's not nothing. You can also get it digitally. It's, I think, $5 digitally. But Manga Mavericks was having a sale on their bookstore. So last month I actually picked it up for, let's see, what did I pay for this? I paid $6.99 and the shipping was $5.36. So, I mean, I'm used to that. I pay, $20 shipping for a $5 Psycho Jump. So this actually didn't seem all that strange for me. So it was a little over $12 to get the print edition shipped to me here. Worth investigating, worth checking out. And I figured, hey, why don't I do something a little more with it? Why don't I review it here on the show? So it's not Dragon Ball, but it's Journey to the West. I love Journey to the West. We've talked a lot about Journey to the West over the years here, sharing some of the character origins and similar stories that Toriyama and even the Toei writers took for filler and adapted and flipped on their heads. I love that kind of stuff. I'm not going to say I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I have actually read the damn thing. So that probably places me up in the upper echelon of those who do know something about Journey to the West, I hate to say. So at 36 pages, it's hard to review, right? Because it's so short. Do you just tell everything that happens in it? I don't really want to do that because are there things to spoil? I guess not really. I mean, it's a Journey to the West adaptation. You probably know what's going to happen. So I'm not going to tell exactly the story, how it goes. I think the setup that's worth knowing is it's kind of in media res. Like, you start this, you are expected to know what Journey to the West is, who some of these characters are, at bare minimum, Wukong and Trip, maybe even the horse, maybe even some of the gods. And you're expected to just roll with it and know what's going on. There's plenty of context clues if you don't know that you can just roll with it anyway and completely understand what's going on. But it does not pause to explain anything to you about who these characters are or what's going on with them. It just rolls with it. The really interesting thing about this, and kind of why I do like it, is that this is not a straight adaptation of a single Journey to the West story. It appears as if it would be, but it's not. It's a very direct play on one very specific story, but it's also an amalgamation of a bunch of other things. It's got bits and pieces from earlier chapters and later chapters. It pulls characters here and there, and it also has entirely new characters that are themselves amalgamations of other characters. So it felt very fresh in that regard. Wukong, or Goku, felt very fresh in terms of characterization. He's definitely not the Wukong from Journey to the West proper, and I think that gives it a really unique spin. So beyond the story stuff, I guess the art is the other thing to really note. This is from a few years ago. So if we're talking originally 2019, Zenzo probably has improved or refined, let's say, let's be real generous here, quite a bit in the time since. So we are jumping back in time. This would, not exactly the same, but this would be like going back to a, Dragon Ball Heroes Victory Mission chapter after being so familiar with the Dragon Ball Super manga. Yeah, it's going to be Toyotaro, but it's going to be from an earlier part in his career. The art here by Zenzo, it's very wispy, which I like, but there's a lot of real clean lines, lots of good fill-ins on things. You think about Toriyama's artwork, and it's hard to not compare to Toriyama. It's what we know, it's what we do. Toriyama's command of the page, whether it's the paneling or just the composition of the characters and the dynamic contrast of how he colors things, nothing compares to that. So I think there's some really cool stuff in here that does that. There'll be real thin outlines around some of the characters. Like I'm looking at some of the demons towards the bottom of a page here. And their outline is real thin and wispy, but then like their claws are really thick and really filled in. I think that stuff looks super, super cool. And then we got the actual demon there on the next page, and he looks incredible. He's just so ominous. I love that kind of stuff. The other thing that I think Zenzo does, I don't know if I want to say well, but I noticed it, is there's some really cute stuff along the way too. Like there are a couple of frames of, it's hard for me to call him Goku. I'm going to call him Wukong, but they're one and the same. Son Goku is just the Japanese pronunciation of Son Wukong. There are these occasional panels of Wukong, just like when he's getting the food from the family, and he's just really cute, like turning his head to the side a little bit. That stuff is nice. I love the little demons, the imps. They can turn on a dime from being super cute to super, super horrifying. But I think there's also a lot in here in the artwork that is, it's just hard to tell what's going on. When we get into the action, I don't always know what it is I'm actually looking at on the page. It's hard to tell. When we get some of that extra shading here, when it's not just black, it's not just white, we get some of that like print tone in there, screen tone. That stuff is a little hard to parse on the page. And yet, nonetheless, it's still impressive to look at. So again, it's only 36 pages. I don't know, like by this point, you're like, okay, do I like Journey to the West? Yes or no? Do I want to spend $12 or $5 digitally? Yes or no? Like you've probably already made up your mind about that, as I did going into it as well. So I guess from here, what I want to do is actually give a little bit more background on what this is adapting from Journey to the West and what I thought was interesting in the translation there from that. So like I mentioned, this pulls from various bits, but it is absolutely, definitively a play on chapters 74 through 77, really 74-ish into 75 here from the original Journey to the West. This part of Journey to the West is kind of like 4-chapter mini arc. I guess if you want to call it like the Lion Camel Ridge Cave arc. Pretty notable one because Wukong and Gang, they come up against these kind of like 3 great fiends along the way. So the way that chapter 74 originally starts is they just got done with this whole other saga that they got through. And they encounter along the way this old man that warns them of these 3 powerful demons, and they're like thousands of minions. This guy disappears. It turns out it was Venus, who's basically an ally, for lack of a better phrase, that really wanted to prepare them for it. So, all right, they're going to go. They're going to figure this out. So Wukong kind of like goes ahead and he notices there's a little demon. So I'm going to read from chapter 74 here. And if you've read Bonds, or when you do read Bonds, this section is probably going to seem pretty familiar to you. And this is why this is almost certainly a play on this part of the story. Turning hurriedly to look, he discovered a little fiend hauling a banner on his shoulder, which had on it the inscribed word command. He had a bell tied to his waist, and he was beating a rattle with his hand as he walked from north to south. Pilgrim stared at him and thought he was about 12 feet in height. Smiling to himself, Pilgrim said, "He must be a postal soldier on his way to deliver a document. Let me eavesdrop on him and see what he has to say." So Wukong, being on his own, seeing this messenger imp, if you will, from Bonds, This is the story. This is what Zenzo is playing with for this part. But what's different is this is chapter 74 of Journey to the West. By this point, Tripitaka has the entire gang. He's got Monkey, he's got Pigsy, he's got Sandy with him, and the horse as well, of course. The horse, of course. But here in Bonds, this is said to be early in their journey together, and it's just Wukong and Trip together. Again, it's so hard for me. Was it Sanzo? Is that what it actually is? Yeah, Tripitaka is Genjo Sanzo. In the early part of Bonds here, I won't spoil some of the what gets changed, but in the original version, it's the Bodhisattva Guan Yin who gives the headband that Tripitaka is able to control Wukong with. Because in Journey to the West, Wukong isn't necessarily sold on really doing this the entire time. Like he has some crisis of faith pretty often about staying with the monk for this whole journey. But here in Bonds, Wukong, Monkey, Goku, he's pretty set on protecting Tripitaka here. So the individual who bestows the headband is changed from Guan Yin to someone else, let's say. And then, so it takes from that real early, God, what even chapter is that in Journey to the West? That's all the way back in chapter 14 that Kuan Yin does that. So we're pulling from chapter 14 and we're pulling from chapter 74 here. In some ways, we're also pulling a raw underlying story element from a bunch of chapters, although this is definitely part of chapters 74 to 77. Part of the whole deal with a lot of the monsters, the fiends, and the fallen gods is that if they eat this monk, who's this reincarnation, they will get longevity or even immortality themselves. So that's part of the reason why they want to capture the monk and eat him. This happens real early in Journey to the West and just carries on over and over and over again. It's constantly getting kidnapped or tricked into almost being eaten when he's rescued at the last second, of course. And actually, I think it's the chapter right before there. If chapter 14 is where he gets the headband, I think it's chapter 13 is the first real big example of the monsters trying to eat the monk. And at that point, that's actually before he's met Wukong, as I said, because he just gets Wukong the headband next. At that point, Trip's still traveling with two like fellow monks or priests or accompanying folks from earlier in his journey. They fall into a trap set by monsters led by this king. One of the monsters comes in to say that the bear mountain lord and the steer hermit have arrived and they're going to eat him. And this kind of ties into what I want to get to, and that's who is the bad guy here in Bonds. So I would actually encourage you beyond this, if you haven't already, read Bonds, finish listening to this podcast, but then actually go check out, as of this, I think it's still the most recent episode of the Manga Mavericks podcast itself. On episode 249 of their show, not only do they give kind of like their own look and peek and review at it, but they've got the translator on to chat about it as well. I thought it was really fascinating because I'm like, okay, I know a little bit about what this is all pulling from. So I'm real curious to hear from the person who had to translate it, what they went through on it, because I know what was going to give them a little bit of a hang up. And sure enough, that's what I heard there on the show. See, the main bad of Bonds here is, I guess we'll call him, do you read it? And this is how the translator read it, so I'm going to read it the same way. Ki Ushi Daio, something like the Great King Yellow Ox. Here's the thing. There's no character in Journey to the West named Great King Yellow Ox. You plug this exact kanji into a Google search, the only results you get are Bonds by Zenzo. And that's it. There are some close approximations of this name, sort of, kinda, but not really. Because there are some other yellow characters. Probably the most notable is the yellow-browed Great King or Great King Yellowbrow. Very notable and important opponent they come up against. He's not an animal, though, and the story is totally different with him than what's seen here in Bonds. There's, of course, the Bull Demon King, who we know adapted as Gyu Mao, the Ox Demon King from Dragon Ball. But in Journeys to the West, he's white, apparently. And his friendship, rivalry, and just whole situation with Wukong, and then his wife, Princess Iron Fan, his son, Red Boy, like, this is kind of like some of the most important and notable and iconic series of stories from Journey to the West. Absolutely nothing like this whatsoever. So the reason I call out that character is because this character, if he's an ox, is he related to the bull of the Ox Demon King? No, he is not. He is not that character at all. So I also mentioned earlier in chapter 13, one of the first real examples of them trying to eat the monk, the priest, Tripitaka, Sanzo. There in chapter 13, there's the steer hermit, as he's called in the Anthony C. Yu translation, along with some tiger and bear demons. This is also not him as well. I do want to read a little bit from chapter 13 from Anthony C. Yu's translation of Journey to the West, just about steer hermit. A cap of twin horns rugged, and a humpback most majestic. His green robe showed his calm nature. He walked with a slumberous gait. He came from a father named Bull. His mother's name proper was Cow. A great boon to people who plowed. He was thus called the steer hermit. So again, you just think about general bovine. Could it be this character? Really not. So who is Great King Yellow Ox? Robert Harkins here, who's the translator on Bonds, has a lot of tough choices. Journey to the West stuff in particular is interesting to translate, particularly when they're Japanese adaptations of it, because what do you go with? Do you go with the Japanese pronunciation of the name, or do you go with the Chinese pronunciation of the name? That's a tough call. I don't know what you go with. If it's Journey to the West, like it's a Chinese origin story, I would probably myself always want to go back to the original Chinese pronunciation of the names. But you know what? That's translator's choice. But the interesting thing here is, okay, what do you do with this character? Because this character does not exist in the original Journey to the West. So Huang Cho is what gets listed as the name here. And I think that's totally fine. That's the choice you go with, just knowing that it's yellow ox is ultimately what we're seeing here. And that's what we see on the page. Obviously, we don't get the color, but we do get the skull that shows us this is the animal we're looking at. So what else is this character pulling from if there is no yellow ox in the series? So at this point, we kind of got to go back to chapter 74 through 77 of Journey to the West. And I mentioned that there are these three fiends who are really the ones here in charge of everything. And they're animals themselves. They are a lion, an elephant, and a bird. And so the one in particular that maybe we're pulling from a little bit here, and it's a stretch, is the elephant. And maybe the only reason is because this elephant has yellow tusks. And so, what is Senzo doing here? Is he pulling just individual elements from a variety of characters? And like I said, just making this amalgamation of various characters. Let me read for you here this description of the yellow-tusked elephant. The one to his left had phoenix eyes and golden pupils, yellow tusks and stubby legs, long nose and silver hair, a head that seemed tail-like, knotted brows beneath his round forehead, and a huge rugged torso. He had a soft voice like a lissom beauty, but his white face was a bull-head demon's, a brute of prolonged self-cultivation. This was a yellow-tusked old elephant. So the interesting thing here was you did hear by his white face was a bull-head demon's. That's really interesting because he's an elephant. They say he's an elephant. So I kind of went to an alternate English translation. I was curious what it said here. And this one says, but his face was as fiendish as an ox-headed demon's. So it's kind of unclear, and I don't speak Chinese to go back to it. I do have what the original Chinese here is. But he's definitely an elephant. He actually fights with his snout. So there's no question about whether what animal he actually is. But I think this is what Senzo is pulling from. Or maybe he was just confused and misremembered what this character was. I'm also wondering if one of the big live action adaptations of Journey to the West does a similar thing and combines a whole bunch of characters together into this, but maybe not, because there's no freaking search results for this exact kanji for this character alongside Journey to the West. Never mind even putting the Daio alongside it, but if you put the ki ushi together, put that in quotes, and then you put Sayuki in quotes next to it, you don't get anything. That's really about it. The closest you get is did you mean the yellow-browed great king? No, actually I didn't. I'm looking for someone else. So maybe that's a little bit of background on how I think Senzo put Bonds together. Took a bunch of different elements and smashed them all together and made his own original story here. I think that's really interesting. I think that's a cool way to do it. I think it gives you an opportunity to tell your own story and do your own spin on these characters, and leaves it open to either prequel chapters or sequel chapters if at some point in the future he wanted to expand on it. Because it just you're in and you're out, and that's it. And that was that story. So I think it's really neat in that regard. So from there, I guess the only other thing I can talk about is the actual physical release from Manga Mavericks Books, the actual print production here. It's fine. I don't know what else I can say beyond that. It's got a nice kind of glossy cover, and the pages are a really nice stock, actually. You're getting your $12 here worth of print material. The only thing I would call out is just a couple quirks here and there. One is, I don't know if I would call it a mistake or something overlooked, but there's an asterisk alongside the main bad guy. Says, tomorrow we feast upon Tang Seng. And there's an asterisk alongside that. And I think that was intended to be a translator note to explain just the different names that are given to these characters, that being referring to the priest there, Sanzo Tripitaka. The other thing is just in some of the lettering, there are just instances where there's a hyphen in a word and a line break in the middle of a word where, if you're up to me, I would probably just split it differently to not have it in the middle of that word. I think there's There's enough space in some of these available word dialogue bubbles to just play with the print size a little bit and just maybe keep the word together. That's a personal preference thing. That's just something I would do differently. Doesn't necessarily speak to, like, that's not a mistake. That's just a choice of how you do the layout there. The only other thing I would like to have seen in here was just some kind of introduction page. You open it, you've got a blank back of the cover. You've got a title page that just says Bonds. You got another title page that just says Bonds in the corner, and then you're into it. You don't get like the author introduction, anything like that. The closest is actually on the back page, the copyright page. You get, I don't know if this was originally an actual tweet from Zenzo originally, or if they're just linking the Twitter account there. But yeah, there's a message from Zenzo kind of back there on that copyright page. Would like to have seen something up front, just like a little bit of an explanation about it. Maybe that stuff, maybe you just don't get the permission to include that kind of thing. You know, some kind of note about this is based on Journey to the West. Just any of that kind of context would be super cool. But it's also the kind of thing like, well, if you don't know it, maybe you look it up and you learn something along the way. That's my look at Bonds. I hope that was interesting for you. For me, it's like, hey, this thing is just kicking around. I'm looking at it and I know Journey to the West. I can talk about this. Maybe I can give someone some information about it. Hope you enjoyed it. That's that. I'm going to take another quick break to sip on some tea. I've been talking for a while here. I can't believe I'm still going. I will see you in a second and we'll wrap up the show, huh? Well, what do you think? That was the title page popularity poll. That was Bonds by Zenzo, out now from Manga Mavericks Books. That's a heck of a podcast episode. I can't believe I'm getting through this. I'm really forcing, like it's really coming up from the depths of hell here to project my voice. But I think it was worth it. Actually, I had a really good time going through this. I ended up spot checking a whole bunch of other Journey to the West stuff just for my own personal enjoyment. I'm due for a reread on that whole damn thing. It's so good. It's so good, y'all. I'm going to wrap it up there, folks. www.kanzenshuu.com. That is Kanzenshuu.com. Kanzenshuu.com is your main source for all things Kanzenshuu. Now that Otakon is done, I am plugging away at a whole bunch of other stuff again. Working on FAQs, working on rumor guide stuff, working on just miscellaneous guide pages here and there. If you ever want to spy on what public things I've been working on, at the very bottom right of every page on Kanzenshuu, there's an edit log. You can actually see what Heath and I are doing at any given time. That doesn't show private pages and non-public, things that we haven't actually launched yet, but it's just an interesting peek at some of the stuff we got going on. I've got a lot of great podcasts, none in the bag, but certainly planned. I hope my voice stays with me. I've got 2 more days on this steroid. I hope it's going to kick it out of my system for good this time. I am hoping to see you again in another 2 weeks for the next episode of Kanzenshuu, the podcast. In the meantime, kanzenshuu.com, patreon.com/Kanzenshuu. Of course, grabyournearest.com, aka twitch.tv/VegettoEX. We are pretty much back on schedule. We will see you most Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. All your favorite Dragon Ball podcast, folks, throwing shells at each other, telling stories. As Ken says, it is the real content. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for bearing with me. I have been Mike, VegettoEX. I will see you next time here on the podcast. What a pleasure to be back with you. I will see you then. Bye, folks.